For more than 100 years, ICMA has been recognizing the vital role that global knowledge exchange plays in shaping the careers of local government professionals. There are many ways for ICMA members to gain professional global experience, one of which is by applying for one of ICMA's Global Scholarship Awards. One of today's guests has done just that, embarking on her own professional global journey as a result. Joining us for today's Global Spotlight is Nina Vetter, City Manager of Newport, Oregon, USA, and recipient of ICMA's Tranter-Leong Fellowship Award. Also joining us is Meghna Malhotra, Deputy Director of the Urban Management Center, and Anurag Anthony, Vice President of the Urban Management Center. The Urban Management Center, better known as UMC, works closely with local governments by providing tailor-made solutions to professionalizing urban management in India. ICMA has also worked closely with UMC for more than 25 years on a number of technical assistance projects, trainings, and other best practices in local government management. Nina, you recently participated in a global exchange to UMC with support from ICMA's Tranter-Leong Fellowship, which provides funding for ICMA members to take part in a local government-focused professional development experience in either an Asian country or other country outside of the US or Canada. Can you tell us a bit about this experience?
First of all, it was amazing just to get to spend some time with the people at the Urban Management Center and learn, how they help professionalize local governments, how they support local governments, and the real work that they're doing, kind of an extension of public service, but through the Urban Management Center. And there's some fabulous people there. So it was really great to just spend some time with the organization that's doing really great work across India in support of local governments. It was such a great experience to learn, how India works, how local governments in India work, how in a lot of ways we're similar. We have a lot of similar challenges, whether it's housing, transportation, traffic, roads. We have a lot of similarities, but there's also some differences as well between us and India. So it was really great to just get a different perspective. Local government again, shares a lot of the same challenges, but I think we approach solutions and we approach how we do our work differently. And that varies certainly from city to city, even in the US, but it definitely varies as well when you go from the US to another country. And so it was really helpful for me in my career and as a professional to better understand how other people approach, professionalizing and solving local government challenges. Because, you really learn, I think, the best when you can go and just see how other people do things. Really get to experience it. Again, learn the approach that Urban Management Center takes, learn the approaches that their staff takes. So it's really a terrific experience of learning and relationship building. I mean, I can't say enough about the people at the Urban Management Center and also the people in India. It was such a great experience to go be in another culture, which again, I think it's really important in our profession. We work for a city, so we're really geographically centered in one place. That's inherent in our profession, but it's important to sometimes remove yourself from that. It gives you perspective. It allows you to grow and develop when you go specifically in another country where you're thrown into a very different culture. So I think it was, really great on a lot of levels. And again, very thankful to ICMA and for Urban Management Center for being willing to take me in for a little while and teach me so much.
That different perspective I'm sure completely enriches the experience, and I'm sure you can take a lot of those nuggets back with you back to your community. And Meghna and Anurag, this one's for you. What was it like working with Nina during her fellowship with UMC?
First, ICMA, a huge thanks for this opportunity. It was super enriching. It was fantastic having Nina with us for the 10 days. Very enriching experience. And like you introduced, at UMC, we support a host of local and state governments across India. And there are numerous challenges that cities face in India. I mean, be it institutional challenges, be it resource constraints, be it systemic issues that we don't have systems yet set, or if they are set, that they're very weak. Most of us in the organization, though we are architects, planners, but none of us have served as city managers. And having Nina with us, I think brought a very, very refreshing, and I think it really brought in a very grounded perspective. Her experience of running the cities which she's run, and the kind of challenges that she has helped those cities wade through, helped us bridge this whole gap between policy design and the whole operational delivery. so to say. Having a city manager work with us so closely also helped validate some of the work that we are doing. And that was phenomenal. And Anurag, if you want to talk about the work that you did with the Gift City.
Yes, absolutely. It was such a wonderful experience to have Nina, um, also because of her experience, but I was more interested in her laughs that brought a different vibe to the room during the meetings and the energy that she brought to the city management discussions. Never seen a city manager in India being so enthusiastic about sharing what they've been doing. And I recall one project that we were working with the government of Gujarat, that's the state government here. Uh, there is a gift city, which is an international fintech city, one of a kind in India, modeled on the successes of international financial centers like Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong. And it's really a flagship project of the Indian government. And we've been entrusted as UMC to help them prepare Citizens Charter and public health bylaws for the gift city. And these instruments are not just regulatory documents, but they actually help shape the image of the city. It helps shape the urban experience for its visitors, occupants, workers, and also define service quality. And for an international fintech city, the service quality has to be at par with what similar international cities do. And that's exactly where Nina brought her insights and added depth and nuance, drawing from her wide experience into city management and bringing a lot of learning from the global best practices.
One of the challenges that we are really trying to solve for in India is to ensure sanitation workers' safety. I think those systems anywhere else in the developed world are pretty set. We hardly hear of fatalities or we hardly hear of accidents that happen during this work. But unfortunately, in India, this is a very caste driven work, and there are workers who do this work without appropriate PPEs or even without, very basic safety devices. And most of this work is done through contracts and through, service contracts. And that's what one thing that we were trying to solve for is how do you make contracts such foolproof so that the flow down clauses to ensure sanitation workers' safety are mentioned in those contracts. This is an area where Nina really helped us think through, I think, with a lot of nuance. I think it was her city manager's hat and her experience that really helped us think through that, where can you go wrong? Where can contractors really, what are the loopholes? Where do you really need to bring in a specificity? How are you going to monitor whether, the contractor is doing the right things or not doing the right things? So I think she really helped shape those model contracts, and very soon these model contracts will be issued by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs throughout the country, and so that cities can then use these clauses as they get into service contracts with their contractors.
That's amazing. And it sounds like this is the perfect example of a purely two-way exchange where the perspectives on all sides have really benefited all of you in your careers and what UMC is doing. And I'm sure, Nina, what you'll take back with you back to your own community. And along that line, Nina, what did you learn during your time with UMC that you plan to take with you back to your community?
I think what I really enjoyed about this fellowship was the opportunity to work on so many different projects, right? And I think that's what really enhanced probably the experience on both ends was it wasn't just here's one project, go dig in and we'll see you at the end of it. I was working actively with staff. We went out on site for some of the specific projects like the Gift City. We went and visited it. We got to meet people involved in the project and then worked on a number of projects. We talked about the Gift City, Smart City, the sanitation worker, contracts, also SOPs, and also some really interesting work that I have never seen before that I really thought was interesting is some economic mobility work, particularly with regards to women in the sanitation space. And that's such a huge project that UMC is working on and actually really India is trying to tackle. And it was so interesting in the approach that UMC takes, which I think is sometimes falls out of the space of what like traditional local government would think they're responsible for, which is a lot of, convening, bringing people together, understanding the challenges and limitations of people who are wanting to progress in the sanitation space, and trying to really meet people where they're at. There's a lot of people, this is what I learned, there's a lot of people who maybe don't have the education or training and can't necessarily soak that up in a traditional sit-down training with a PowerPoint. That doesn't really work. So they developed a board game to try to better educate and engage women in the sanitation space into building their own businesses. What a cool, creative way of trying to approach a problem, right? So I learned a lot of those things that, how do you approach challenges and projects differently to really try to meet people where they're at, and to try to reach people in a way that's probably non-traditional, I would say. So, and UMC does that, and I really appreciate that about the organization, is they're not just doing what we did, the last 15 years. For every single project, they're thinking about how do we do this better, have it be more impactful than the last time we did it.
Love that creative approach, and that definitely sounds like a great lesson to take with you back to your community. And Meghna and Anurag, back to you. You definitely touched on this in your first answer, but if you would like to expand on it some more, how has UMC benefited from Nina's fellowship exchange?
I think Nina's presence in our office kind of triggered everyone to learn a little more about city management globally. And the way Nina shared her lessons, that was through a talk that she delivered about decoding how cities work in the US. It was not just a presentation, but it was a deep dive conversation where our staff directly engaged with Nina, posing questions about how city management works and what's been her experience. There were questions around comparing US cities with Ahmedabad, the city where we live, and how are they similar or different from each other. There were questions around how governance structures work in the US cities versus how they work in Indian cities. Interestingly, the US city governments have policing under them, but in the Indian governance structure, policing is a state subject. So how do the two systems compare with each other? What are the pros of one over the other? So that was really, I think, a very crucial session that we had, where Nina's experience could be shared with people from UMC spread all across the country.
I think it was a very candid conversation to hear from a city manager. For a lot of us who in our state offices, I think that was very, very educational, and that was very important to kind of understand that, when we really talk about professional city managers, what does it mean?
I'd also like to add one instance during that talk where somebody posed a question about being in a leadership position. How does Nina manage the human resource challenges? And that question very interestingly came from the fact that in Indian cities, let's say for Ahmedabad, which is about 7 million people, there are about 15,000 city government staff, including sanitation workers, engineers, managers, finance people, public health professionals. And managing such a huge human resource pool for Indian city managers is always a challenge. So that question came from one of our participating team members, Nina, and Nina very well responded, showing her documents about the job descriptions, about performance management systems being deployed in US cities. And those were very interesting new ideas for many of our staff who were not exposed to how city governments have been working in the rest of the world. And that's a lesson that has stuck with many people, and people have been working across our projects to think of capacity building in a much more structured way.
I'm so glad that UMC has seen the benefit of getting that city manager perspective. And Nina, can you talk a bit about how you've grown professionally or personally or both by your time spent with UMC?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned at the beginning, it's for sure just good to get out and see how other countries, how other cities approach the work of local government. I think, personally, it's really refreshing, I always say, to my soul to get out and go to another culture and just be in it. Professionally, I think, it really is good to see how other local governments work. India, in a lot of ways, kind of like we were talking about earlier, the structure is very different than here in the US, right? Very, very different. And the authorities and the powers that are given to local governments are very different than in the US. And so that was really interesting to learn the pros and cons, right? Because it's not necessarily wrong or right, but it's how does it work in when a local government only has these powers and when they're structured this way versus how does it work in the US? And I think you don't think about that when you're working in this, where I'm in my work day to day. I don't think about, well, what if the governance structure was different, right? Or what if I had the power to do X, Y, Z? So I think it really challenged me too to think about how could local government actually work a little bit different if things were just set up differently. So I think kind of opened my mind to thinking about new ways of approaching things. So.
Yeah, it's really helpful to step outside of that box, I'm sure, and really gain that extra perspective from a different culture. And we've definitely touched on this in everyone's previous answers, but let's dive into it some more. This one's for all of you. Why are global exchanges and knowledge sharing, like what you experienced, so valuable to anyone in local government?
We and ICMA together have been doing a number of exchanges, be it as part of city to city exchanges. ICMA used to run this program called as the City Links program, where city managers from the US come and work with Indian cities. And that would be over an extended period of about 2 years. And there was an actual action plan that was prepared, and we all, would actually work together as a team. So, and I think that one thing has really stuck with me. I mean, even back then when we were doing all these exchanges, and also when we worked very closely with Nina, is that challenges are the same that cities face. Absolutely the same. The scale can be different. The scale of Nina was talking about homelessness as an issue now growing in cities in the US. I'm sure that scale is very different as compared to the homelessness issues that we have in Indian cities. Um, so the scale might be different, but as a city manager, when we all come together as city manager to city manager, I think we all speak the same language. The challenges are the same, and I think that's where I think this whole camaraderie of working together and trying to maybe know one solution is there, but together coming up with a solution that really is fit for the challenge that we're solving for, is something that these global exchanges really help.
I think the global exchanges are really important in building relationships and learning from each other, and hopefully will improve the local government profession as a whole long term, right? Because we're learning how we can do things better from each other, should lift us all up, right? Should help build and improve all of us. And so I just think there's so much learning that we can do if we just take the time and the effort to, spend some time with someone who's doing it differently and just learn and immerse yourself in how someone else approaches a problem. So I think there is so much opportunity. I hope that, ICMA continues the program and that other city managers take advantage of it. It really was beneficial. Coming back, my council was really interested in the experience. So I actually did a whole presentation for both council and my staff as well, for any city staff here who wanted to hear. And they also got to learn a lot too, right? So I tried to share the learning beyond just myself, but also with my city council and the staff too, so that they could reap the benefits as well. So I recommend it. I think, again, long term, I really think it benefits anyone in the local government profession.
Your network isn't just within your own country, especially with ICMA. You can have a network around the world of like-minded local government professionals. So that's great to hear from all of you. And Nina, what advice can you give to other local government professionals who may be interested in taking part in a global exchange like what you did with UMC?
Yes, if you're thinking about it, you should do it. I really, obviously you've heard today that it was such a great experience for me, both personally and professionally. And I think also it benefits my organization as well, which is part of the goal too, is it's not just for me, but it also is to benefit the city that I work for and the profession of being city management. So I would encourage people to, look at the opportunities as they come up. And really, when you go there, just dive in. I think that's when I really felt like I was getting the most out of the experience, was just, listening, learning, experiencing, talking to the staff about the projects that they're working on. That's really where you're going to get the most benefit, is just really diving into the experience.
This last one is for all of you. What are your hopes for the future of global cooperation and exchange between local government professionals around the world? And how can ICMA help with that?
ICMA has to continue these exchanges, city manager to city manager exchanges, city to city exchanges. I think when we really do that, and when we go and are able to see another city not as a visitor, not as a tourist, but as as someone, when the other city opens up its doors and kind of opens up its systems, and we're able to see those systems and what works, what doesn't work, with all the vulnerabilities. I think that's where the learning really happens, and that is long term, that is sustainable, and that is really the answer to kind of building city management as a professional career across globe, across countries.
It really is important, again, for the future of the profession. We talk a lot about innovation and wanting to move the profession forward, and always wanting to think about how we can make the services that we deliver even better. And I think in order to do that, we need to have better exchange of information and experiences across different entities. I think we won't get there if we're not actively trying to pursue, how do you solve this problem differently, learning how other people use certain technologies. If we don't do this work, I don't think we're going to be able to advance and improve service delivery. So I think it's really crucial to the future of local government as a whole that we're trying to learn and grow, and the global exchanges is a really important part of that.
In US cities, the relationship between the council and the city managers, the way it works, that's something I think a lot of countries with a democratic setup, who have a mayor, the council, and then you have the administrative side. That kind of working dynamics is something that I'd really love to see more of, and perhaps bring in the learnings and best practices of those cities to many cities across the world, not just India, but wherever there are democratic setups at city governments. I think that's a beautiful sharing that ICMA can facilitate beyond just technical city to city exchange programs.
I want to thank all of you for taking the time to speak with us today. It has been a true privilege to hear about your experience, and we're really looking forward to what's next for all of you as you implement the new knowledge you've gained from this experience into the work you're all doing. And we want to give a special thanks to UMC for hosting Nina and offering her such a unique opportunity to learn and share knowledge. Want to participate in a global knowledge exchange opportunity like this? Qualifying ICMA members can apply now for the Tranter-Leong Fellowship or John Garvey Scholarship, both administered by ICMA's Global Engagement Committee. Learn more about these opportunities and apply today at the links provided in the description below. And to view more global spotlights, be sure to subscribe to our channel.